single white feather. That is all it took to become the most hunted man in Vietnam. It sat tucked into the band of a bush hat, small and pale against the dark green fabric, visible to anyone who looked.
The perimeter is too spread out.
Copy that, Hill 55.
This man chose to be seen.
What's your status?
He wore it on every mission, through every jungle patrol, into every firing position, daring the enemy to find him. The North Vietnamese gave him a name for it, Long Trang, white feather, and then they gave him something else, a $30,000 bounty, the highest price placed on any American sniper in the entire war. But here is what you need to understand before this story goes any further. That feather was not arrogance. It was a declaration. And by the time you learn what this man did to earn it, you will understand why an entire army wanted him dead, and why none of them could collect. Vietnam, 1966. The war had already been grinding for over a year since the first American ground troops arrived, and the jungle was winning. Conventional tactics built for open battlefields in Europe were failing in the triple canopy forests of Southeast Asia.
The target is located right here, Echo Point. Patrol swept the area at 04, but we anticipate movement by midday. Keep your comms tight.
Carlos Norman Hathcock II was born on May 20th, 1942, in Little Rock, Arkansas. His parents separated when he was young, and he grew up in the small town of Wynne with his grandmother Myrtle. There was no money. There was barely enough food. His grandmother handed him a .22 caliber rifle and a handful of cartridges. By the time he was 10, Hathcock was putting squirrels and rabbits on the table with a single-shot rifle that gave him no room for error. Every round counted. Every shot had to land. The woods around Wynne became his classroom, and hunger became his instructor. He learned patience not from a book, but from lying still in the brush for hours, waiting for a rabbit to emerge. On his 17th birthday, May 20th, 1959, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. He had dreamed of it since he was 8 years old, the day he saw a neighbor in Marine dress blues. Within the Corps, his shooting ability became impossible to ignore, and in 1966, they sent him to Vietnam. He arrived as a military policeman. Captain Land heard about the Wimbledon Cup winner and pulled him immediately into the 1st Marine Division Sniper Platoon, stationed at Hill 55, south of Da Nang. And this is where the legend begins. Land gave Hathcock a partner, Lance Corporal John Roland Burke. Hathcock carried a Winchester Model 70, chambered in .30-06, fitted with an 8-power unertal scope. Burke carried binoculars, a map, and a talent for reading wind.
Copy. Sector 9 clear.
An area crawling with enemy fighters who moved freely at night and set ambushes by day. Every patrol that left the firebase risked contact. Every trail was a potential kill zone. Hathcock and Burke changed the equation, where an infantry squad might walk into an ambush and lose 3 men.
The cycle of the bolt, the mechanism that defined a career.
And here is what nobody tells you about sniper warfare. The kills are not the point. The fear is. When enemy soldiers learn there is a sniper in the area, everything changes. Hathcock did not just remove targets. He became an invisible pressure that weighed on every decision the other side made. The enemy noticed. They gave him the name White Feather for the trademark plume he wore in his bush hat. And then they started sending people to kill him. The most dangerous was a sniper the Americans knew only as the Cobra. This was not some random rifleman. The Cobra was a trained counter-sniper, dispatched specifically to eliminate Hathcock. He announced his presence by killing a Marine gunnery sergeant just outside the sniper quarters on Hill 55. The words were simple and quiet and carried the weight of an oath. He was going to get the Cobra, one way or another. For days, the two snipers circled each other through the jungle like predators sharing the same territory. The Cobra fired first during one encounter, his round striking Burke's canteen after Hathcock tripped over a fallen tree at the exact moment the shot came. Luck, the kind that runs out fast in a jungle war. But the Cobra made one mistake. He repositioned facing into the sunlight, and Hathcock, scanning the tree line, caught it. A single glint of light, a reflection of a scope lens. He fired instantly. The round went through the enemy sniper's scope, through the lens, and struck him behind the eye. Hathcock was a fraction of a second faster. If you are still here, you already know this story is not finished, because the Cobra was only the beginning. There was another enemy operating in Hathcock's area that made even hardened Marines go quiet. The Americans called her Apache. She was a female fighter who led a small unit, and she had been doing things to captured Marines that nobody on Hill 55 could talk about without their voice going flat. She tortured prisoners within earshot of the base. She did it deliberately, so the Americans could hear. One young Marine was captured, kept alive through an entire night and half the following day, then released to die slowly at the perimeter wire while his own unit watched. Hathcock and his spotter tracked Apache's unit for days. Then one afternoon, they spotted a group of 5 enemy fighters moving along a trail at 700 yards. One of them stepped off the path. That is how Hathcock identified her. He called it the best shot he ever made. He fired once, then once more, for good measure. The jungle around Hill 55 got quieter after that. There was also a problem that Hathcock could not solve with a Winchester. Hill 55 was surrounded. Enemy troops moved at distances far beyond the reach of a standard sniper rifle, and patrols sent beyond the perimeter were getting torn apart. The farthest target sat at 2,500 yards, nearly a mile and a half. No rifle in the Marine arsenal could touch them. So Hathcock did something that nobody had seriously attempted before. He took an M2 Browning heavy machine gun and turned it into a sniper rifle. The 50 caliber round it fired was enormous, built for punching through engine blocks and light armor, not for threading through a single man's silhouette at extreme range. But Hathcock understood something about ballistics that most shooters never consider. From the top of a small mountain, he zeroed the weapon over 3 days, mapping the distances to every position where enemy troops moved. The closest was 1,000 yards. The farthest was 2,500. Then he waited. But the mission that tested every limit Carlos Hathcock had, the one that stripped away everything except willpower and training. Intelligence identified a high-ranking enemy officer operating from a compound deep behind enemy lines. The mission was classified. Hathcock was not given details until he agreed to accept it. The target was surrounded by patrols, sentries, and defensive positions. The only approach was across 1,500 yards of open field with no cover, and the only way to cross it was to crawl. Hathcock volunteered himself rather than send one of his men. He removed the white feather from his hat, the only time in his entire deployment he ever did so. For 4 days and 3 nights without sleep and without food, Hathcock crawled on his side across that field, inch by inch. He called it worming. He moved so slowly that the grass barely shifted as he passed. Enemy patrols walked within feet of him. One soldier nearly stepped on his hand. A bamboo viper coiled 6 inches from his face, and he lay frozen, controlling his breathing, refusing to flinch, until the snake moved on. On the 4th morning, the officer stepped out onto the porch of his compound. An aide walked in front of him, then the aide moved. Hathcock fired a single round. It struck the officer in the chest. The compound erupted. Soldiers scattered in every direction, searching for the shooter. Hathcock had already planned his escape route. He crawled to a nearby ditch and worked his way out of the field. They searched the tree line in the wrong direction. Hathcock made it back to Hill 55. By the time his first tour ended, he had 86 confirmed kills. He returned to the United States. But he could not stay away. In 1969, he went back to Vietnam and took command of a sniper platoon. September 16th, 1969. Hathcock was riding on top of an amphibious tractor, an Amtrak, moving along Highway 1 north of landing zone Baldy. The vehicle's fuel tanks held roughly 500 gallons of gasoline. Beneath the road, buried in the dirt, sat a 500-pound anti-tank mine. The blast lifted the Amtrak into the air. Gasoline erupted in a wall of flame that engulfed the vehicle and every Marine riding on it. Hathcock was thrown clear by the explosion and knocked unconscious. When he came to seconds later, the vehicle was burning and Marines were trapped inside and on top, covered in flaming fuel. Here is where you find out what kind of man Carlos Hathcock really was. 7 men, 7 lives. Other Marines finally grabbed him, pulled him away. He was evacuated by helicopter to the hospital ship USS Repose, then to a naval hospital in Japan, and finally to the burn center at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. He underwent 13 separate operations for skin grafts and burn treatment. When a fellow officer suggested recommending him for the Medal of Honor, Hathcock refused. He said he had not done anything another Marine would not have done. 26 years later, the Navy awarded him the Silver Star for that day. He accepted it from a wheelchair. After recovering, Hathcock returned to active duty and poured everything he had left into the next generation. He helped establish the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at the Marine Base in Quantico, Virginia. Every technique he had learned, every lesson the jungle had taught him, he trained snipers while living in constant pain from his burns. In 1975, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. His body was failing. His hands could no longer hold a rifle steady. His eyesight deteriorated. Spent his final years in a wheelchair, still teaching, still sharing what he knew with police marksmen and military units that came to learn from the legend, a white feather that an entire army feared. If this is the kind of history you want to keep hearing, the missions they do not put in textbooks, the names that deserve more than a footnote, stay with us. There is much more to come. One way or another, for days the 2 snipers circled each other through the jungle like predators sharing the same territory. The Cobra fired first during one encounter, his round striking Burke's canteen after Hathcock tripped over a fallen tree at the exact moment the shot came. Luck, the kind that runs out fast in a jungle war. But the Cobra made one mistake. He repositioned facing into the sunlight, and Hathcock, scanning the tree line, caught it. A single glint of light, a reflection of a scope lens. He fired instantly. The round went through the enemy sniper's scope, through the lens, and struck him behind the